Yes, Elaine, this week we commemorated the 7th edition of Protection of Civilians in Conflict Week. And this year holds special significance as it marks the 25th anniversary of the Security Council's consideration of protection of civilians as an item on its agenda, as well as the 75th anniversary of the Geneva Conventions. Security Council on the 21st of May held an open debate on this issue. During the meeting, Joyce Misuya, Assistant Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, gave some appalling numbers.
In total, the United Nations alone recorded more than 33,000 civilian deaths in armed conflict last year, a staggering number, particularly given that the actual figures are likely higher, and a horrific 72% increase compared with the previous year.
Almost every speaker, when talking about protection of civilians, they mentioned about Gaza.
加沙冲突
Gaza.
Gaza.
However, there was one speaker from the United Nations, Ms. Alice Wairinu Nderitu, Under-Secretary General, Special Advisor to the Secretary General on the Prevention of Genocide. During her remarks, she did not mention the word Gaza even once. And why? Her job is to make early warnings and make recommendations to Security Council by bringing to their attention potential situations that could result in genocide and on actions to prevent or halt genocide. So that
as I said, I think her remarks were clear. If you have any questions about what was in and what was not in, I would suggest you contact her office.
I sent inquiries to her office as the spokesperson instructed. No reply yet. But for me, if Israeli ambassador here has accused Hamas genocidal terrorists and Palestinian ambassador also said that IDF convicted genocide, at least both parties to the conflict believe there's something alarming happened. But in the past 7 months, her office only issued one statement concerning ICJ's ruling on Gaza situation. Then nothing. Has Ms. Nderitu really fulfilled her mandate? What is the consideration behind this kind of, well, let's say, ignorance? We will keep asking. You asked me to ask the Office of Special Advisor on Prevention of Genocide directly on why she's not mentioning Gaza yet, during her briefing in the Security Council. I did reach out. She and her office did not return. So can you help me ask why?
I can always help you. I will
Thank
try
you.
to help
Please do. Another big story this week is the helicopter crash that led to the death of Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian. In the UN, mourning also took place. In Security Council, at the request of Russia, China, and Algeria, Council members have observed a minute of silence in remembrance of the loss of lives in that crash. Please watch closely who stood up last. Also, UN headquarters lowered its flag by request of the mission of Iran on 21st of May. And this gesture drew criticism from some US politicians. But if you know the UN, here is a flag code and regulations. In that regulations, Article 5 gives detailed rules of lowering UN flags. Number 1 rule is, upon the death of a head of state or head of government of a member state, the United Nations flag will be flown at half-mast at the United Nations headquarters. So actually, as long as Iran is a member state, UN will act on its regulations. And by the way, this is a multilateral organization. UN doesn't necessarily need to reflect some member states' policy, unless the regulations are changed.
The lowering of the flag, the UN flag for President Raisi, who orders that?
It's not an order. It was done at the request of the permanent mission of Iran. It traditionally, when a sitting head of state dies in office, the flags are lowered if the mission so requests.
And one last thing, you still remember the floating dock US has built in Gaza? Hear what President Biden said during his State of the Union speech.
I'm directing the U.S. military to lead an emergency mission to establish a temporary pier in the Mediterranean on the coast of Gaza that can receive large shipments carrying food, water, medicine, and temporary shelters. No U.S. boots will be on the ground. A temporary pier will enable a massive increase in the amount of humanitarian assistance getting into Gaza every day. And Israel must do its part.
And here is what happened. The first 5 days since the inauguration of the floating dock, UNWFP managed to have about 26 trucks loading food from the dock. However, 11 of them ended up being looted by hungry Gazans.
On Friday, there were about 10 trucks that made it. On Saturday, there were 16 trucks that left the floating pier, but 11 of those trucks never made it to the warehouse. Crowds had stopped the trucks at various points along the way. There was, what I think I would refer to as self-distribution.
So 15 trucks for 5 days, that is massive. Even US hoped to initially transport 500 tons of aid per day via the pier and scale up as the time goes on. But for first 5 days, only 569 tons in total. Well, $320 million for a temporary pier. With so far about 5 trucks a day, I hope the scaling up process could be sooner rather than later. And that's all for this week from me.